cannot thank AJC enough for their involvement, not only for Hirsch, but for all Americans and all hostages.
Please welcome AJC Executive Council member Marjorie Kuhn.
Good afternoon. Early in our second round of breakouts, we began exploring our second theme and a core priority for AJC, securing Israel's place in the world. Across sessions, we confronted some of the most pressing challenges of our time. The rise of anti-Zionism as a hate movement, deepening generational divides around Israel and Zionism, and the uncertain future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But we also rooted ourselves in something powerful, the resilience of Israelis on the global stage, and the growth of business and civil society ties that form the bedrock of the region's future. So often, we find ourselves defending Israel against malicious claims, or explaining complex realities in the face of simplistic black and white narratives. That work can be exhausting and frustrating, and at times it can feel very heavy to carry. But then there are moments like these, moments that remind us why we do this work and ground us in a truth we know deeply, that Israel is a modern-day miracle and a profound source of pride. Like every nation, like this country, Israel is not perfect. Israel has many challenges to confront, externally and internally. But that will never diminish our connection to and love for the world's only Jewish state. Thank you. Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people. It is central to our identity, our story, and our future. At AJC, we will never apologize for standing with Israel. We will never apologize for standing with Israel. We will continue to engage leaders around the world to ensure that Israel is not only accepted, but fully welcomed in the community of nations. We will continue working toward a future where Israel and its neighbors can build a better region for all, and we will not give up on that vision. We stand with Israel. We stand with our Israeli brothers and sisters in the best moments and in the most difficult ones, and that will never change. We will never apologize for standing with Israel. Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
Welcome AJC National Leadership Council Ambassador Society member David Ephraim.
My name is David Ephraim, and being a part of AJC's critical advocacy work in Chicago and beyond is something that is meaningful to me in a way that I feel I can make a difference for Israel and the Jewish people. This commitment runs in my family. My father, Don Ephraim, is a deeply dedicated and passionate member of both the AJC Palm Beach Board and the AJC Chicago Board. Beyond his leadership, he is known for his extraordinary generosity and support of many Jewish and civic institutions in Palm Beach, Chicago, and around the world. Recently, my dad took that commitment one step further and made a transformative $1 million gift to AJC, establishing and endowing the Donald M. Ephraim Global Jewish Advocacy Award. This annual award will honor alumni of AJC Project Interchange or other distinguished leaders who have made a significant contribution to combating anti-Semitism or advancing Israel's safety, security, and legitimacy. At a time when being Jewish can feel increasingly isolating, my dad's vision ensures that AJC will continue to lift up and celebrate those who have stood steadfastly with the Jewish people and the State of Israel. I thank my dad for his vision and for believing so deeply in AJC's mission. And now it is my honor to present the Donald M. Ephraim Global Jewish Advocacy Award to its first recipient, San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria. Mayor Gloria has always been a steadfast ally of the San Diego Jewish community. After his March 2023 AJC Project Interchange trip to Israel, however, he truly doubled down on his allyship. October 7th hit especially hard for Mayor Gloria and his community. For more than 27 years, San Diego has been the sister community to Sha'ar HaNegev, and on that horrific day, the head of that community, Mayor Gloria's friend, Ophir Libstein, who we learned about at yesterday's plenary, was murdered by Hamas terrorists. Since then, Mayor Gloria has showed up in myriad meaningful ways for the Jewish community, attending commemorative events, making remarks at AJC San Diego's annual Summit on Antisemitism, speaking out against the vilification of Israelis and denial of the October 7th atrocities. Mayor Gloria, San Diego's first openly gay mayor, even declined to attend San Diego's Pride Festival when organizers refused to remove an anti-Semitic and anti-Israel performer from the festival. Over and over, despite efforts to silence, intimidate, or boycott him, Mayor Gloria has shown a strong moral compass, standing against anti-Semitism and with the Jewish people. His leadership resonates beyond San Diego and sets a high bar for mayors and civic leaders across the country. AJC is proud to work with leaders like Mayor Gloria in the United States and around the world, and we're deeply grateful for his friendship and partnership. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Todd Gloria to the stage. Mayor Gloria, it's my distinct honor to present you with the inaugural Donald M. Ephraim Global Jewish Advocacy Award. Thank you, Mazel Tov, and congratulations.
David, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. And thank you to the American Jewish Committee and the Ephraim family for this extraordinary honor. Receiving the inaugural Donald M. Ephraim Global Jewish Advocacy Award is deeply meaningful to me, especially knowing of Donald's legacy of leadership, generosity, and his commitment to bringing people together across our communities and across our faiths. I want to share with you all how emotional this moment feels to me and how complicated it is. I'm here receiving this award precisely 2 weeks ago in my city. We experienced a horrific act of anti-Muslim violence at the Islamic Center of San Diego. 3 members of our San Diego community were murdered because of their faith. This was an attack on our city's Muslim community, But as all of us in this room know, hatred rarely stays confined to just one community. And the very same forces that target Muslims are the same forces that target our Jewish communities, our black churches, our immigrant neighborhoods, our LGBTQ+ people, and anyone who may be perceived as being somehow different. And I carry with me today a deep sense of pain for our communities that are impacted by hate, violence, and fear. Now, as you might imagine, some people have immediately turned this tragedy into division, into political theater, and to a debate between our communities. There are always voices that are seeking to inflame tensions, exploit grief, and to force people into opposing sides. I'm here to say that I refuse to accept the idea that supporting one community somehow prevents us from standing together. I reject that entirely. You see, as mayor, I am not here to inflame division. My role is to build social cohesion in my city. And that work is difficult, particularly in these times that we find ourselves in. And we have to build trust among people who are willing to participate in this very important dialogue. My responsibility is to protect the people of my city, to help them recognize one another's shared humanity, especially in moments of pain and anger when that makes it even harder. That means standing with every community in our city that has experienced fear, exclusion, violence, or hatred simply because of who they are. And that means refusing collective blame and refusing to let hate define entire communities. I often think about my friend, Mayor Ophir Lipstein, and the friendship that we built through the relationships between our cities of San Diego and Shara Negev. As you know, Ophir's life was cut short when he was tragically murdered on October the 7th. And his life and his leadership represented bridge building, dialogue creation, and building communities. His legacy matters now more than ever, and we cannot let hate block our commitment, Ophir's commitment to peace, to compassion, and to understanding. No, instead, we should double down on those very important principles. My support of the people of Israel and for our Jewish communities comes from my own conviction that everyone deserves safety and peace. And that principle applies to our Jewish communities, our Muslim communities, our Latino communities, to any community that is impacted by discrimination, fear, or violence. And in moments of pain and of division, our responsibility is to reaffirm our humanity, not to rank each other's suffering. We are living through a moment, when it seems that people have lost the ability to see each other as human beings first. And we all know how incredibly dangerous that is. History has taught us time and time again. And that is one of the many reasons that the AJC matters. The fight against antisemitism, the work defining democratic values, strengthening our civic relationships, and creating dialogue across communities and faiths. Mayors have a critical role in that work. Mayors are responsible for helping communities heal after tragedies, bring together families, faith leaders, civic leaders, and neighborhoods when communities are fractured. There are real things that we can do together. We must support nonprofit security grants for houses of worship and community centers. We must invest in interfaith partnerships before crises happen. We must strengthen relationships across cities instead of allowing fear and misinformation to divide us. And we must be willing to speak clearly and consistently against hate, no matter who is targeted. And that standard applies to everyone. Communities cannot heal if we cannot name hatred when it happens. And so I'm here today as the mayor of the great city of San Diego to say that my city will continue to be a city where every person feels valued, feels safe, and feels as though they belong. And San Diego is committed to being a city where every person not only feels safe, valued, and welcomed, but knows with certainty that they belong and that their dignity and inclusion are actively protected and, in fact, championed, not just by their mayor, but by our entire community. There will always be incitements, and cities must work to create places where people feel safe and valued. But our city will not be defined by who shouts the loudest or who hates the most. It will be defined by how we treat one another, especially during those most difficult of moments. We will continue to choose dignity, inclusion, and humanity over fear and division, and that will be what defines us. Thank you again to the AJC and to the Ephraim family for this truly meaningful offer. I accept it with tremendous humility, with true gratitude, and with absolute resolve to continue to do everything I can to be the very best ally I can be to this community and to all communities in my city. Thank you all very much.
Distinguished guests, it is a pleasure to address the AJC Global Forum through this video message. The American Jewish Committee stands for values that are deeply important in the Czech Republic: human dignity, transatlantic partnership, and the fight against antisemitism. For the Czech Republic, friendship with Israel and with Jewish communities is part of our democratic identity. There are real historical reasons for that. Long before becoming our first president, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk stood up during Hilsner affair when a Jewish man was falsely accused of ritual murder. He faced strong hostility, but he didn't retreat. He stood by truth and justice. He later became the first head of state to visit Jewish communities in then mandatory Palestine. Václav Havel continued this tradition. He became the first top representative from the former Eastern Bloc to visit Israel. This partnership was mutual. At a key moment in our modern history, AJC supported the integration of Central Europe into NATO. That support mattered, and we have not forgotten it. Today, our shared values are being tested again. We see rising antisemitism and extremism and pressure on open societies. This is why we must continue what Masaryk called the small, everyday work of democracy. We must speak up when hatred is normalized, when minorities are threatened, and when intimidation replaces free discussion. The Czech Republic remains committed to protecting Jewish life and to maintaining a strong and honest relationship with Israel. Thank you for your long-standing friendship, and I wish you a successful global forum.
Please welcome Director of the AJC Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs, Dina Siegel-Van, and Executive Director of the Confederation of Jewish Communities of Colombia, Marcos Pekel.
Shalom, buenas tardes, good evening to everybody. My name is Marcos Pekel. I had the privilege of leading the Confederation of Jewish Communities of Colombia since 2008 when it was founded, representing a community of about 6,000 people, ensuring our voice is heard in Colombian society and at the highest level of government. I've been attending Global Forum for decades, since 2003, and it's always meaningful to be here and to be strengthened by being together as one global Jewish community through the AJC. Thanks.
Marcos, I'm honored to be standing here with you and to have the opportunity to talk about our work together. Since 2005, BILA has strengthened ties with Jewish communities across Latin America, Spain, and Portugal, supporting the well-being and deepening the relations with the United States and with Israel. Marcos, the Colombian Jewish community has been critical in this endeavor under your leadership. And our formal partnership began in 2007 when we signed a formal partnership agreement and is one of 17 partnerships we have with Jewish communities in the region.
Our partnership with BILA has been indispensable. You've helped amplify our voice internationally and made sure that even in difficult moments, Colombia's Jewish community is never alone or isolated. Together, we have advocated for Colombia's recognition of Hezbollah and Hamas as terrorist organizations and for its adoption of the IHRA definition of antisemitism in 2022 under the umbrella of the Organization of American States. Unfortunately, it has not helped much with the current Colombian government, which has adopted a strong anti-Israeli stance, severe diplomatic relations with Israel after years of strategic partnership, and whose rhetoric has trickled down to generate antisemitism in a country that seldom had known about it.
BILA has been really proud to partner with you, especially in the context of our issues that have taken a turn in recent years. For decades, Colombia was seen as one of the strongest allies of both the United States and Israel. It was a major recipient of U.S. aid and among the first countries to open an innovation office in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, in recent years, under the Gustavo Petro administration, that reality has shifted dramatically, and we've had to really respond not only to opportunities, but to severe challenges.
That's true. The strong anti-Israel and at times anti-Semitic rhetoric coming from the President Petro since October 7 have created an uncomfortable environment. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitic narratives, often tied to political discourse around Israel. But there is hope. Yesterday, we had the first round of presidential elections in Colombia, and a very pro-Israel candidate, Abelardo de la Espriella, won. We met him a few times. He strongly supports the state of Israel, and he will restore full diplomatic relations and strong cooperation with the Jewish state the very first day of his inauguration. Should he win the second round of voting on June 21st. We really pray for a strong restoration of relations between Colombia and Israel, and we hope that will become a reality. Let's pray for that.
We will definitely pray with you for that to happen. And that's exactly where our partnership has become even more critical. Together, we will continue working closely to ensure that antisemitism, whether explicit or disguised as political criticism, is identified, confronted, and addressed at the highest levels.
BILA and AJC broader global advocacy has certainly made a difference. Knowing that AJC is engaging diplomatically in Washington, across Latin America, and globally, gives our community both protection and legitimacy. We can rely on AJC to stand with us in these moments, and I know that other Jewish communities around the region and around the world feel the same. The American Jewish Committee can say what we cannot. We must strike a balance between confronting an hostile government, the most anti-Israel government in Latin America, which, as I said before, severed diplomatic relations with Israel in 2024, and our need to maintain a working relation with that government, especially regarding our own security and freedom of religion. That is why, on many occasions, we have asked you to issue critical statements on social media posts that we ourselves could not make, and I thank you for that.
It's a pleasure always to be at your side, Marcos. We always rely on our community as the experts on the ground and those who are experiencing challenges and opportunity firsthand. And I do want to note that our relationship is not only reactive. We're working proactively, developing strategies to monitor and counter antisemitism, strengthen ties with Israel, and promote democratic values in the region. BILA's annual strategic forum for leaders of Jewish communities of Iberoamerica, which you have attended since 2005, plays an important role in this effort.
It's actually a great meeting within Latin American leaders. We had a special and specific problems, and it really does. Our joint work has had a real impact. Even in the increasingly challenging climate since October 7, together we have effectively advocated, built alliances, and helped secure a bright future for our communities. In fact, the many AJC project interchange delegations, we from Colombia have had more than 4. We have led together to Israel over the past years, have really helped build strong allies who have stood with us during these trying times. And it's important to clarify also that in Latin America in general, we have not experienced the level of violence, anti-Semitism we've seen in other parts of the world. That has allowed us to continue our Jewish communal and religious life largely unabated in October 7, but we cannot rely comfortable. We have to be aware.
That's true, Marcos. Our relationship is built on trust and a deep sense of shared peoplehood. That is why, even in the face of political headwinds, we will continue to partner with your community and with Jewish communities in the region and beyond. While these are tough times, we know that together we will prevail.
Together, that's the key word. And working with AJC together has been great for us. If anything, the current moment has only reinforced how important this partnership is. We are more connected, more prepared, and more determined than ever to safeguard Jewish life in Colombia and relations with the State of Israel.
And you're not alone in this effort, Marcos, and you never will. We will continue standing with you today and always. Thank you for your friendship and for your partnership.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Bila. Thank you, AJC. I'm Israel Hai.
Dear friends, from Jerusalem, I'm so honored and so pleased to join all of you at the AJC Global Forum. So much has changed since pogroms in Russia first drove the Jewish community of the United States to organize on behalf of their brethren and form the American Jewish Committee. But so much also remains, still today, that most obstinate conspiracy theory, anti-Semitism, which awakes in our midst, undermining not only Jewish life, but the moral health of our societies. And still today, our moral center and our open and generous hearts, they are the ones holding us together in bonds of fraternity, commitment, and love that protect and shield us. Today, Jews in our own and one and only Jewish state, Israel, need advocacy and protection more than ever, and it is also clear that in many ways, they've never been harder to get and provide. It is therefore, my friends, that when our most precious values are driving us forward, we are called to defend them. And it is when they are under threat, it is time of peril, of moral confusion, of rising tides of fear and uncertainty. That's when we must summon our deepest resources and speak clearly for what is true. You here in the hall know this well. Contrary to so much of what is spoken, Zionism does not run counter to the ethical principles that define us. On the contrary, Zionism is the ultimate test of their coherence. We, the Jewish people, have sought through the Zionist project to secure what every other nation and people take for granted, the right to take our destiny in our hands in a secure and defensible national home. Our ambition has never been for conquest, but for safety. And we carry the moral calling that has defined us as a people throughout the ages to be a source of creativity, blessing, and ethical purpose for the world at large. Israel is not perfect, we know that, but neither is any other nation. But that does not absolve us of the responsibility to keep striving, to keep preparing, to keep showing up, to heal our fractured world. This is the essence of our calling, the essence of who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, it was upon the ashes of genocidal anti-Semitism that ravaged the Jewish people and shattered all of humanity that a cry emerged for repair, justice, and human dignity. That cry helped lay the foundation for a new moral order for the family of nations, grounded in freedom, democracy, and human rights. Those foundations gave rise to the birth of the State of Israel and to the unique bipartisan US-Israel alliance. And it is upon those foundations that this alliance still stands, and as it has come forward these past months in defense of our people and our shared civilization. President Trump's bold decision to confront the extremist regime in Iran and to work together with Israel towards neutralizing the world's greatest bully has not been just an Israeli interest. It has been an interest of every peace-loving nation. It has been most certainly been an overt national security interest of the United States of America. As I recall these words, during moments of intense diplomatic negotiations between the United States and Iran, so much seems to hang in the balance. The significance of the decisions made now for the safety and future of Israel, of the region, and of the world feels direct, stark, and grave. But this decisive moment is not only about apprehension and fear. It is also about taking the long view and recognizing the possibilities of change at this very unique inflection point. And while so much remains to be seen, it is my hope and conviction that confronting Iran has broken open a path of promise, one that points to the possibilities of an alliance of moderates, of a realignment and reconnection of the Middle East, grounded in cooperation, stability, and a shared prosperity, especially between Israel and its neighbors. Dear friends, in the months and years since October 7th, we have all in our own locations and communities experienced heartbreak, fear, and violence. At moments, it has complicated our understanding of one another as major Jewish communities on both sides of the ocean. But here I have a recommendation, and I remind us of a wise caution of our sages. אל תדון את חברך עד שתגיע למקומו. Do not judge the other until you yourself experience the weight of their reality. How do I implement it? Well, in the following way. The only way to truly understand Israel, and I say to all the leaders I speak to in the world, is to be in Israel. To understand what it is to raise children in bomb shelters, to be a lifelong peace activist who is taken hostage and tortured to death, of fleeing a playground for fear of shrapnel from a missile launched thousands of miles away. To suffer the devastation of October 7th only to discover that in the eyes of a hypocritical world, Israel is to blame. I recognize also that the only way to fully appreciate what you are experiencing out there in the diaspora, a rejection masquerading as objection to the Jewish state, is to be in the diaspora. So, to draw on our greatest strength and gifts, we must acknowledge the realities we each face. Israel remains a post-traumatic society, grappling with profound questions about its future in the heat of an election year and showing immense resilience. And Jewish communities around the world are confronting deep ruptures to belonging, identity, and security. There's no question the challenges we each face are real, But alongside all of this, we have seen that our defining qualities endure: our resilience, our deep commitment to justice, democracy, and to each other, our willingness to answer the call of responsibility to that difficult moments which demands of us. This is the truth that has sustained us across generations and landscapes, and it continues to sustain us now. Allow me to thank each and every one of you for bearing the torch of the principles and purpose that have always defined us. And allow me to deeply thank, the AJC and its leadership, especially my good friend CEO Tate Deutsch, the National President Robert Lappen, for their superb work on the front lines for the Jewish people every day. Let us remain open to the possibility of good days ahead, days of wise hope and goodwill, prosperity and peace. It is possible, it is necessary, and it is the promise that guides our path forward. Toda rabah to all of you. Hope to see you in Israel, and may we go together from strength to strength.
Please welcome AJC Executive Council member Matt Cohen.
Good afternoon. In 2026, voters in both the United States and Israel will head to the polls amid deep polarization, shifting political coalitions, and growing uncertainty at home and abroad. These elections come at a consequential moment. Antisemitism is rising, anti-Israel sentiment is growing, the Middle East remains unstable, democratic institutions are under strain around the world. And against that backdrop, the decisions voters make this year will help shape not only the future of our two democracies, but also Israel's place in the world and the values that bind our societies together. For AJC, the strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship has never been about one party, candidate, or election. It rests on enduring ties between our people, shared democratic values, and mutual security interests. But elections matter. They shape priorities, they influence leadership, they affect public discourse, and they help define the environment in which that relationship operates. To help us understand what's at stake, we've assembled an outstanding panel of journalists who are deeply connected to the political dynamics of both sides of the Atlantic and the issues at stake in these elections. We're honored to be joined by Gili Cohen, Senior Diplomatic Correspondent for Kan, Israel's public broadcasting corporation, whose reporting provides an insider's view to Israel's political system and foreign policy debates. Joshua Krashar, Editor-in-Chief of Jewish Insider, a leading voice covering American politics and the intersection of elections, public policy, and the U.S.-Israel relationship. And Barak Ravid, Global Affairs Correspondent for Axios, whose reporting bridges Washington, Jerusalem, and capitals around the world, helping audiences understand how decisions in one capital can reverberate far beyond it. Moderating today's discussion is AJC's Chief Impact and Operations Officer, Casey Custon. This is exactly the kind of conversation that AJC exists to convene. Informed, honest, and grounded in the belief that understanding political realities is essential to effective leadership and advocacy. Before we begin, a brief reminder. AJC is a 501c3 organization and does not endorse political parties or candidates. What we do care deeply about is understanding the political forces that shape our democracies, our communities, and our shared future. With that, let's get to the conversation. Please join me in welcoming the panel.
Welcome, everyone. I think we have to acknowledge that we are in a moment here where political polarization is deepening all around us on both sides. And it feels heavy and it feels fraught for our community in particular, and for the US-Israel relationship, which is being tested in new ways. Today, we'll look at those shifting political dynamics, the changing public attitudes, and the growing divisions in our politics that are shaping the US-Israel relationship, the experience for the American Jewish community. What does that mean for the future of the US-Israel partnership, for the democratic values and the strategic interests that have long underpinned that relationship? And if things have not been complicated enough the last 2 years, we have elections in both countries coming up. And while we are here to talk about politics, I know what all of you are thinking, which is that you hope Barack will drop one of his famous scoops from the stage.
I already filed.
So it's fair to say that we've really all been struck by the degree to which Israel now dominates American politics. We've seen at times of conflict in the past when criticism of Israel spikes, but nothing like we're currently seeing and feeling. It feels different. And voices on the far left and the far right that were fringe are gaining traction, and extreme positions feel like they're moving closer and closer to the middle. And many Americans are looking around and saying, I'm not sure I see my values fully reflected in either political party. And the electoral systems in both of our countries don't really lend themselves to the silent majority, right? Primaries in the United States give way to the activists' more ideological voices, and the need to form a coalition in Israel often does the same. So are we in a period of temporary political turbulence, or are we now looking at what is a deeper political alignment? And Josh, we'll start with you.
Well, in preparation for the panel, I was trying to come up with a Hebrew word that describes American politics, and I think balagan is an apt descriptor. Look, I think, Casey, you kind of nailed it in setting the stage for this panel. It feels, covering politics for 2 decades, that up feels down, left feels right. Everything seems a little bit crazy, and candidates who, in my experience covering politics on left, right, Republican, Democrat, who would have been disqualified for the election of dog catcher, no less, senator, are actually getting incentivized because of their extremism, because of their radicalism, because of their ideological positioning outside of the mainstream. And your question was about, is this a permanent feature, a long-term feature of our politics, or is this something that's just happening in the moment? And I fear that this is something that's a longer-term phenomenon for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're not just seeing this rise of anti-establishment, populist, extreme, frankly, parties in the United States. In England, if you're following British politics, as I do a little bit, the biggest phenomenon across the pond in England is the rise of a very populist right-wing party in the Reform Party, and a rise of an anti-Semitic left-wing party, anti-Israel certainly, in the Green Party that are winning constituencies in local elections and gaining political momentum. In France, not that long ago, we saw local elections, parliamentary elections, in which the right-wing party, very far-right party, the Le Pen party, is now essentially the mainstream right in this country of France. And you have the Communist Party outpolling the traditional liberal parties. This is happening across the globe, some exceptions, but there's a rise of radicalism, a rise of extremism. And I think getting to the second reason why I'm pessimistic that this is just going to wash over in the short term is we've seen this trend coming gradually for a long time, and it's been sort of like global warming. You kind of see the statistics, you see the rise, you kind of justify how the mainstream, how the traditional public opinion and parties will eventually kind of reassert control. But I think a lot of our change in our politics has a lot to do with our smartphones. We are now, instead of reading a story that's published at Axios or at Jewish Insider, I'm increasingly getting 10-second little snippets of out-of-context news information that's actually designed algorithmically to get me angry and to perpetuate, frankly, extremism and radicalism. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing across the globe, but certainly in the United States, the rise of the youngest Americans. Usually I think the conventional wisdom for a long time was that we rely on kind of the youth to be the future, to actually have a better future in our country. And I still hope that that is the case here and abroad. But what we're seeing in the United States is that the most extreme views, anti-Semitism certainly is among them, but endorsement of political violence, views of radical ideologies that were considered verboten in American politics, making a comeback and having the most purchase among Generation Z and younger. Those are things that are not short-term trends. These are things that we're going to see more of, I fear, in the future. And I do think it takes, to wrap things up, I think it takes a more muscular middle. I think there is a silent majority in this country. I think a lot of you in the room probably represent the moderate majority. But far too often, people don't speak up because it's easier to shout if you're on the radical left or the radical right. And I think what we're going to have to see for kind of the political dynamics to change, for this to be a short-term phenomenon rather than a long-term phenomenon, is the moderates, is people to speak their principles, their values, even if they've been shy and even if they didn't want to stick their neck out in the past.
And as we look at what's happening related to Israel in American politics, it's hard to deny that so much of it is tied up in our own sort of political polarization, and the reaction to what is happening in Israel is viewed through the American political lens. And frankly, I think it's fair to say that for many decades, organizations like AJC have worked tirelessly to ensure that regardless of what political party was in power in either country, that the relationship remains strong. But now we are entering what seems like a different dynamic where that relationship is sort of tied up in the personalities, in the leadership of both countries in a way that perhaps it has not been before. And for both supporters and critics of the leadership of both the US and Israel, we have seen that they're very, very closely linked now. And we hear a lot more elected officials saying, I support Israel, but I don't like the current government. And on the other side, we have people saying, this president has been the best president for Israel that America's ever had. Barak, when we think about that dynamic, how is that going to shape future electoral outcomes? And what happens in the fall if the House of Representatives flips to a Democratic House and we'll still have a strong pro-Israel majority leader and Hakeem Jeffries, but what happens if there's a new prime minister?
So first, I have to say that I sort of disagree with the premise of the question because, at least in my feeling, there has been over the last few, I think mainly since the war with Iran started, I feel that there's actually sort of a growing bipartisan agreement on a lot of the criticism against the Netanyahu government policies. And I feel that because I hear very similar things from both Republicans and Democrats. I don't know to quantify it. I don't know, exactly, which part, how big is this, bipartisan bloc? But it's much more than I've heard, I don't know, in many, many years. I'm covering this for 20 years. The number of Republicans that I talk to that tell me almost similar things that I hear from Democrats that are criticizing the Netanyahu government policy. The music might be different, okay, because people come from different political parties, style might be different, but when you take out the music and you go to the lyrics, you hear that's more, you see there are a lot of similarities, and I think that's a trend that we need to pay attention to, and I think a lot of it is connected to the policy. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I'll say it as politely as I can, but the current Israeli government policies are pretty crazy. Okay, on many things, okay, on many, many things. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And I think people here notice, regardless of which party they are from. And I think there's, when people, for example, the issue of the situation in the West Bank, I used to hear zero or close to zero from Republicans about the situation in the West Bank. I hear a lot about it, a lot. And people who are, again, it's the easiest thing to say, oh, AOC or Bernie or something, but you have a lot of Republicans that are looking and saying, so what's this, why are Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are doing what they're doing? Why is Netanyahu allowing this? Why is it? And this comes from Republicans. I hear it from Republicans. And it's people who are both in Congress and in the administration. And and I think that when you look, for example, at what President Trump did today, basically reining in Netanyahu on striking Beirut, okay? This is the second time President Trump has done this in his presidency, okay? It's not Barack Obama, it's not Joe Biden, it's Donald Trump. And he did that because he thought that what Netanyahu was going to do is A, against the national security interests of the United States, and B, because he thought it was against the Israeli interests. And this is Donald Trump. I mean, I'm sure, in Israel there's, I don't know how many of you watch Channel 14, which is the Bibi channel. So on Channel 14, Donald Trump has been for some time now, has turned from the best president ever for Israel to he's almost Obama. He's getting there bit by bit. On Channel 14, he's almost Obama. So, but I think it is a trend people here sometimes miss, that there's a growing consensus among Democrats and Republicans, even if the style is different, even if they say it differently. But when you look at the bottom lines, they're saying the same bottom lines when it comes to the policies of the current Israeli government.
And Gili, what is the Israeli public view of that when they look back across the ocean at what's happening here?
Yeah, I think when there is a claim or a blame that Israel influenced US politics, there's the same claim / blame that Trump or the US is involved into Israel interests. And Barack mentioned the Lebanese issue, and it was also in Iran, and it was also in Gaza. And the fact that Donald Trump implement a ceasefire when it was against or contradicts Netanyahu's official statement, even in the last days, regarding that Israel will bomb Beirut if Hezbollah continue to shoot missiles towards Israeli citizens and communities, which is like 5 minutes ago also happened. The fact that Netanyahu and Trump need to balance their inner interest and their outcome to the public. Also, you mentioned the political environment is truly messed up. I think that the fact that both of those leaders, Netanyahu and Trump, are bigger than their party. There is no even one Israeli who votes for the Likud. He votes for Netanyahu. And I also think that also the Trumpism and the Trump's movement also reflect on that people tend to vote for Trump and not for the Republicans, can make them even a bigger scope of what they can do and what they cannot do. I mean, Netanyahu can do things that other Israeli leaders cannot do. But it also can hurt him. For example, today, Barak mentioned Itamar Ben-Gvir, which is the ultra-nationalist government in Israel's cabinet, and he mentioned Netanyahu's statement that Israeli prime minister should be the one that can say no to American president. And he was also mentioning, Netanyahu, this is your time to say no to Trump. There is some people that will say, come on, you cannot say no to Donald Trump. But the only one who went into politics and went truly a big campaign saying that he is the only one who can is Netanyahu. And the gap between promises and reality has come into those days and these elections today.
The dynamic of Trump is a fascinating one, and it's different in Israel and the U.S. And I find a lot of people, Barak and I were talking about this before the panel, that there's so much anti-Trump sentiment in the United States, but even a lot of more liberal-minded voters in Israel have a more favorable view of the president, and that affects a lot of, I think, the misperception about how politics works in both countries. The central rule of understanding Republican Party politics writ large is, and by the way, we just finished a month in which President Trump sided with a number of candidates in contested primaries, and every single one of his endorsed candidates, including a right-wing candidate in Texas, Ken Paxton, and a more, frankly, moderate candidate in Kentucky in Ed Galrein, prevailed. Didn't have anything to do with policy. Ed Galrein was the more pro-Israel candidate and handily defeated an anti-Israel, one of the few, frankly, anti-Israel incumbents in Washington. Ken Paxton, it wasn't about Middle East policy, but he was a more MAGA, a more right-wing Republican with a lot of ethical baggage, but he won as well. Why did they both win despite different ideological profiles? Trump's endorsement. So the Republican Party is the party of Trump. It doesn't have a lot to do with policy. I think if Trump decided he didn't like Israel or had a personal beef with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that's why Netanyahu follows to the beat of the president's drum, there would be a shift in Republican Party voters' positions. But right now, there's a lot of partisanship and polarization, and right now the Republican Party, even though there are misgivings among younger conservatives, the vast majority of Republicans say they're very pro-Israel, and increasingly a growing number of Democrats and a majority of Democrats are much more critical of the US-Israel relationship. But that creates complications for Prime Minister Netanyahu, because he knows full well that if he angers Trump, as many Republicans in Capitol Hill, if they say the wrong thing, or if they are not loyal to the White House's agenda, they could find themselves losing a primary. They could find themselves out of favor, and that could have consequential impacts that would affect potentially the relationship. So, I mean, I think Netanyahu understands the uniqueness of dealing with Trump versus dealing with some of these other presidents that we've talked about. But it also has given, the opportunity for Democrats, as we're in such partisan times. Democrats aren't necessarily reacting on policy grounds either. They see what Trump's doing, they don't like Trump, so they're opposing it, and that's had consequences for public opinion on Israel among the Democratic opposition.
Josh, you made a reference in your earlier comments to the way that we consume information and the impact that it has on politics, and particularly for a younger generation of voters, many of whom will be voting for the first time this year and then in a 2028 presidential election. They consume their content online, they're seeing misinformation, lack of context, they're seeing influence that they don't know exists behind the scenes. And I think it really lends itself to the misperception among American voters about Israel and vice versa. What are the biggest things that Americans misunderstand about Israeli politics, and what are the biggest things that Israelis misunderstand about US politics? Gili?
I think that, like you've mentioned, the youngsters which will vote for the first time, I think that something that is remarkable is the fact that most of the Israeli 18s or 19 years old that will go to vote this year know someone who fought or have friends who lost their lives into this war that is continuously for 2 and 8 months. And I think that this factor, that I have a cousin who fought in Gaza and in Lebanon, and his fathers also fought in Gaza and Lebanon, and perhaps my kids will also fight in Gaza or in Lebanon. And this continuously of the war, unsurprisingly, affect their sentiments regarding politics, and they are way more right-wing than in the US. They're more conservative and less liberal. And the phrase of fog of war is invisible for them. The war is on their daily life. Also, I mean, for me, even to be here was something that was in the atmosphere of what will happen if there will be another attack in Iran. And the fact that this is the daily life of many, many Israelis, that we are still in a wartime, living in a war zone, and this is how those elections will be, also with having the remembrance of October 7th and its effect.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm amazed to see it as an Israeli, and I'm sure Americans Americans who want to actually dive in and look at the Israeli election, I think they'll also be surprised that right now, even though Israel has been in almost 3 years of war, there's at the moment not even one candidate who says that he wants to be prime minister, and not even a candidate who says that he just doesn't necessarily want to be prime minister, except for the Arab parties. So all the Jewish parties, none of them say, vote for me because I promise you that I will end the war. vote for me because I will make sure that if I'm elected, everything I'll do, the only thing I'll do from when I wake up to the time I go to sleep is to make sure that there are less funerals in military cemeteries. There's not even one.
Even
who
the
says
word
that.
peace is not into Israel campaigns anymore.
There's
as
not
it
even
used to be.
one, not one who says that, okay? When in America, almost any candidate right now is a candidate that says, I will not get entangled in wars, we need to finish the forever wars, we need to get out of the Middle East. You choose your, but it's all the same trend. And I think that's, to me, it's a very big difference right now, that in America, it's good politics to say that you will not get into a war. And in Israel, it's good politics to say that you will be tougher than those who were before me, and you will go to war here and there and here and there. I think it's a very big difference in the way that politicians are messaging to their constituents.
I know that we could have this conversation all day. There are so many more things to touch on. Before we leave the stage, I know you're all journalists and you deal in facts mostly, but I'm going to ask you to deal in predictions for just one moment. Indulge us. Who wins the midterms? Who's the next Israeli prime minister? Barak?
Well, in the midterms, you mean the House and the Senate? Look, it's not a very bold thing to say that, Democrats will win the House and Republicans will manage to keep the Senate. It's not, I'm not taking a big bet here. Although I have to say that until recently, I thought that Republicans will manage to keep the House. I sort of changed my mind recently.
If you want to be bolder, I could ask you who will be the 2028 Democratic presidential nominee.
For now, today, if you ask me today, I think it's still JD. I think that's today, but it's 2.5 years from now. But that's my opinion. He just has a much stronger base in the party, in my opinion. Maybe Josh would disagree.
Well, that's a bold. I'm surprised you went there. That you.
No,
I hear the murmurs in the room.
Yeah,
already.
that's. But again, I'm also not. I'm not an expert on U.S. domestic politics. So if in 2 years I'll turn out as an idiot, I urge all of you to come and tell me you were an idiot. And I accept it.
I always trust Barak's reporting, so you can take it to the bank.
No, but and about Israel, I think, and this is not a bet. This is math now. The Israeli opposition will not be able to form a coalition and swear in a prime minister without the support of the Arab parties. And they handicapped themselves once again by saying, by taking a racist position and saying that they will not base their coalition and will not swear in a government with the votes of the Arab parties. Mathematically, this means that Benjamin Netanyahu is the next prime minister either because he wins the election and gets 61 votes in order to swear in a government, or because they just can't swear in a government and he stays on as an interim prime minister, which I think that's the scenario that I think we're going to see, and another election in 3 to 6 months.
Gila, you agree?
Yeah, and I think that also the other side of this math is that Netanyahu cannot, according to the last polls, he also cannot form a government. So we're going straight into the deadlock of a transitional government and having another elections, and we'll all be very happy to have another elections in Israel.
And Josh, you want to take, who's the 2028 Democratic presidential nominee since Barak took the Republican?
So I would not rule out Kamala Harris. Incumbency and name ID matter.
More
See,
murmurs
I
than me.
knew I had to follow you up. But no, I actually do think that, to make a broader point, and I think it's true of Vance as well, the attention economy, to the point about social media, is so fractured that you actually have to do a lot of work. Sometimes people run for president just to get attention because you can't get attention by going on CNN or Fox News. You know, it's harder to get people's attention if you're not a name brand. It's harder for the challengers, the candidates who are governors or lower name senators. So I do think Harris has some fundamental advantages, and everything I've heard sounds like she's definitely considering running. A decision hasn't been made yet. I will also say on the midterm side, I think Republicans hold the Senate because Democrats nominate at least one candidate, Graham Plattner perhaps, in Maine, who is just too extreme, too radical for even a state that wants to elect a Democrat to stomach. And I think Democrats will like the Tea Party did for the Republicans in 2010. I think Democrats will have their own Tea Party and lose a Senate seat or two because of the nominees that they choose.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks for sharing your insights. We've got quite a road ahead of us, and we'll look forward to seeing if there's an Iran deal on Barack's Twitter later.
Dear participants of the Global Forum, I am honored to address this distinguished audience and to send greetings from your friends in Estonia. Especially as this year, Estonia marks 100 years since becoming the first country in the world to grant cultural autonomy to our Jewish population. Unfortunately, this period of cultural autonomy proved to be short-lived. In 1940, the Soviet Union occupied Estonia. The communists disbanded Jewish organizations and closed Jewish schools. The only thing necessary for history to repeat itself and for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. Both Russia and Iran represent a threat to the democratic world, not only militarily, but also through their attempts to undermine our alliances, through sabotage and through spreading anti-Western propaganda. Russia remains the most direct and long-term threat to Euro-Atlantic security. The atrocities they continue to commit validate everything we have been telling our allies about for decades. Russia has not abandoned its strategic objectives to destroy the Ukrainian state and suppress its people. Russia's goal is to undermine the security architecture that has safeguarded Europe and our transatlantic community for the past 7 decades. Behind closed doors, Russia may claim that it seeks place, but actions speak louder than words. Together, we must send Russia a clear message. They will not succeed. Time is not on their side, and their imperialist policies belong in the trash can of history. Dear friends, NATO must remain the cornerstone of our collective security. This year, Estonia will spend over 5% of its GDP on defense. We are revitalizing the European defense industry. Europe has heard and understood President Trump's message. We must do more, and we will. With the aim of keeping our alliance strong, Estonia takes the security concerns of our allies seriously. It is also in Estonia's interest to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Together with our allies, Estonia is supporting the United States and contributing to joint efforts to stop the Iranian regime. We see this as an essential part of transatlantic solidarity and allied unity. With that, I wish you a successful forum, and I also extend my warmest greetings to Ted and to Bobby. Let's continue to stand together in promoting freedom and our common values. Thank you.
Please welcome co-chairs of AJC's Center for a New Middle East, Andy Marks and Ben Plotkin.
We now turn to the defining challenge of this moment, the conflict with the Iranian regime and its impact on America's global leadership and role in the region, as well as Israel's security. This regime has been a destructive force for almost 50 years, undermining regional and global security.
Iran's leadership has never hidden its ambitions. It has pursued power not through integration, but through intimidation, exporting violence, backing terror proxies, targeting Americans and allies alike, building ballistic missiles, and advancing an illicit nuclear program designed to shift the regional balance. This strategy has destabilized the Middle East while threatening Israel, regional partners, and the broader international order.
And yet, even as the Iranian regime and its proxies have worked to sow chaos, Israel's military, diplomatic, and economic relationships in the region continue to deepen. These partnerships are shaping a new regional reality. Understanding Iran, then, is essential, not only to confronting the immediate threats, but to understanding the future of the entire region.
Iran is far more than the extremist, tyrannical Islamic Republic leadership regime. It is a society filled with people who have paid an extraordinary price for that regime's toxic choices, people who continue to demand dignity, freedom, and a future beyond repression. That tension between authoritarian power and human courage defines this moment.
For this segment, we will hear first from one of the most courageous and uncompromising voices of that resistance, Masih Alinejad, an Iranian journalist and human rights activist whose work has exposed the Iranian regime's brutality and amplified the voices of Iranian women and dissidents around the world.
Her activism has come at enormous personal cost, yet she continues to speak with clarity, urgency, and moral force. Masih's story reflects AJC's core belief that defending human rights and confronting extremism are inseparable, and that standing with those who challenge tyranny strengthens the security of democracies everywhere. For that very reason, we were honored to award her the AJC Moral Courage Award in 2022.
Following Masih's remarks, we will turn to a forward-looking panel discussion to hear insights not only on where the region stands today, but on the strategic choices that will shape its future and the implications for Israel, the Middle East, and global security. We are honored to be joined by an exceptional group of experts: Joyce Karam, Editor-in-Chief at Al Monitor; Brian Hook, U.S. Special Representative for Iran in the first Trump administration; and Brett McGurk, White House Coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa in the Biden administration. And our distinguished moderator is AJC's Chief Policy and Political Affairs Officer, Jason Isaacson.
But first, please join us in welcoming Masih Alinejad to the stage.
I feel like I am among my family. You know why? Because we share the same killers, the Islamic Republic. Last week, I sat in a courtroom. I want to scare you right now. Be ready. I have seen my would-be assassin. I have seen a hitman hired by the Islamic Republic to kill me at Fairfield University in Connecticut. He received 10 years prison sentence. And only 2 months ago, I have seen another would-be assassin. He received 15 years prison sentence. They have been waiting for me in America, on US soil, in New York, to end my life. And only 6 months ago, 2 Russian mobsters, I have seen them in federal court in New York, sharing chilling details how they were trying to burn down my house to end my life. My crime? Having a loud voice to echo the voice of millions of people who say no to Islamic Republic. Yes. And as you see, I'm still loud. And I want to talk directly to the leaders, the remained one, in Iran. گورتون رو گم کنین. Go to hell. I am not scared of you. Because my heroes of Iranians, with bare hand, empty hand, they take to the streets facing the same killers to say no to Islamic Republic. But let's be very clear. I'm not scared, but that should scare democracy because they were here. One government, a terrorist organization, managed to challenge the national security of America. Fairfield University didn't invite me back. So you see, the killers didn't target just me. Miles away from America, they managed to cancel human rights activists. They managed to cancel freedom of speech at university here in America. Because no one want to invite someone being followed by killers. Only American Jewish Committee. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Thank you so much for having me here. I am here today to talk about those who are being forgotten right now. Right now that we are here, we're talking together. All the cameras are in the negotiation table. All media talking about the Strait of Hormuz. All media talking about the percentage of uranium. And no one talks about Saleh, only 19-year-old Iranian athlete with dream. He wanted to be a champion, to win medals in Olympic. But what he won? A rope. They hanged him. They killed him for the crime of protesting. No one talks about Sasan Azadvar, 21 years old. Another athlete with a dream to shine. They hanged him. No one talks about Vorishe and many other Kurdish women waiting to be hanged. They are in the death row. No one talking about the executions in my country. That picture is too graphic for you. It's too sensitive for Twitter, for Instagram. They censor this. But this is the reality of my people every single day when we breathe here, when we have party, when we drink, when we dance, when we have dinner. They hang people. Only 19 years old. In 2025, 1,600 people were executed. Can you believe that? These are not numbers. They are the daughters of someone, the sons, the mothers, the fathers, the loved ones. And 48 of them, women. 47 years, the regime executed people for demanding freedom,
for simply saying that they want to have a normal life, that we all take it for granted. And they hang people even in public. Do you know who watch? Children. I was only 7-year-old when the school principal came and said, line up. We're taking all of you girls to a field trip. I was excited, and I thought that we were going to watch football game, something fun. But they took us and forced us to watch public hanging. At the age of 7, I was told showing my hair was a crime, but showing public hanging was blessing. This is the Islamic Republic that the West is trying to negotiate. Their language of negotiation is death. It's sending assassins. In 4 decades, more than 800 people were the target of either kidnapping plot or assassination plot beyond their borders, in the Western soil, on Western soil. This is the Islamic Republic. And I remember when I was forced to watch public hanging, they even told us that we need to shout, "Death to America," as loud as the White House would shake. They told us that you have to shout death to Israel as Tel Aviv would shake. And guess what? They didn't plan that the same generation turned that fire against them, and my people right now chanting death to Islamic Republic as loud as the clerics shaking. Yes. But that's not free. My people are paying huge price. You know, before coming on a stage, yes, I forgot to read. I write my speech. But I want to talk from my heart, because every single Iranian, when you talk to them, they don't know which story they have to tell you. To talk about 88 days of blackout, to talk about mass executions, to talk about hope, to talk about being abandoned, to talk about being forgotten. That's why I thought I'm going to talk to you. And I'm not going to censor myself. My people took to the street because they thought the whole world is watching them and trying to help them. In January 2026, only in 2 days, peaceful protesters faced military weapons. And guess what? In 21st century, in the age of transparency, internet, technology, AI, we still don't know how many people have been massacred. Some said 12,000. Some leaders says 32,000. Some other leaders believe 40,000. It breaks my heart, because these are the dead bodies. The regime did a genocide, and that's a genocide when they first shoot my people. And then, if they are wounded and still they survive, they went to the hospital to finish up the wounded ones. And then they put the dead bodies everywhere in the street, in the hospital. And they forced the family members to go and put the zip down and identify their children. This is a collective torture. But you know what? I talk to the people. Now, when I talk to my people, they still have hope, because these are the people. Look at this. Sitting here, unarmed. His only arm is his hope. His only arm is his belief, his dream that we will get rid of dictatorship. But believe me, we cannot do it on our own. And I'm not shy to say that. The West became the greatest embarrassment of democracy. The left and liberal became the greatest embarrassment of humanity. The United Nations. The United Nations became a shameful place to unite dictators. In 2005, the United Nations passed a resolution to protect the right of civilians when they face military weapons. You all heard about that. You know what they did? Right in the middle of massacre, the United Nations appointed the Islamic Republic to monitor women's rights and human rights globally. That is not an insult to us Iranians. That is an insult to democracy. That's a slap in the face of every single of us living in democracy and allowing this to happen. Antonio Guterres is the biggest embarrassment of United Nations. Before coming here in the green room, I saw people from the administration, President Trump administration, and some other from President Biden administration talking together. I stared into the conversation. This is missing. When it comes to terrorism, America must be united. This is not about left. This is not about right. This is not about Republican and Democrat. This is about a terrorist organization, a designated terrorist organization called Islamic Republic, threatening democracy everywhere. And when I see that is still the West hesitate to unite to end terrorist regime, it breaks my heart. Because believe me, ending terrorist leaders, IRGC leaders, is not a tragedy. It is a sign of justice for victims. And that's why I want to ask this question. When you leave this room, do you really believe that the world did what the people of Iran deserve to see in terms of supporting them, showing their solidarity, and taking actions? No. When Ali Khamenei, the killer of my country, the man who ordered my killing, he's dead. When he was killed, when he was removed, I've seen it with my eyes. I've heard it myself, that the leaders from Spain, Germany, United Nations, some in America were mourning for the removal of a terrorist. Wow. When Osama bin Laden was removed, did you mourn? Or that was a sign of justice for the victims of September 11? What is different between the people of Iran and people of America? There is only solution. This regime cannot be reformed because they're not a normal government. They're not a normal state. There is only one solution: to hear the voice of the people of Iran and help them to end this regime. That's how we can guarantee global security. I keep hearing that. I keep hearing that. When I ask the leaders of democratic countries, they say, we stand with the people of Iran. We don't want you to stand with us. Please sit down with your allies and make concrete decision to guarantee the national security of United States of America, to guarantee the safety of the Middle East and across globe from one of the most biggest cancer, which is called the Islamic Republic. I see that the university, college campus students, they kept quiet. I am for free Palestine as well, because I want to free Palestine from the Islamic Republic, from Hamas, from Hezbollah. Because I have lived under Hamas, Houthi, Islamic Republic mindset, militia, walking and bullying and harassing people like me. I carry the wound of war. I carry the scar of war being waged on us by the Islamic Republic. To those leaders, policymakers in Europe, in America, everywhere, when you see that we are not at war with the Islamic Republic, you are wrong, because the Islamic Republic is at war with you and democracy. And that's why you need to support the people of Iran. If you want to end endless war in the region, there is only one solution: to end the root cause of this war, which is the Islamic Republic. And I want to add something else, because I don't want to bash some left and liberal without saying why, because I don't want to generalize that. When I ask students in university campus that, why don't you take to the street to say free Iran? When you say free Palestine, you have to help the people of Iran to get free from dictators. You know, one of the students looked into my eyes and said that because we have been told that compulsory hijab is your culture. We've been told if we protest against Islamic State, Islamic regime, we cause Islamophobia. Wow. Wow. Phobia is an irrational fear. But my fear and the fear of millions of people receiving lashes for showing their hair, getting hanged for criticizing the Islamic Republic, facing the assassins, being butchered in the streets is rational. And that is something you need to work. And I still have a hope on the new generation, the future of America, the future of Europe, the future of the world, the new generation. Join us. Support the people of Iran, because my people are not just fighting for themselves. They are risking everything to protect the whole world from one of the deadlier viruses, the Islamic Republic. And I want to promise you, I have a dream that one day I will invite you all in my beautiful country. One day, when the Islamic Republic is gone, we will celebrate together without chanting death to anyone, because we, the people of Iran, are all about love, are all about happiness. And before this barbaric regime, we were known for music, for our culture, even for our food. But unfortunately, because of the Islamic Republic, now everyone remember bombing, killing, terrorizing. Join Iran, because you have only one solution. Otherwise, standing with dictators, future, the history will judge you, America. We, the people of Iran, are better allies to you compared to these backward mullahs. Thank you so much, and appreciate for it.
The European Union's designation of the IRGC as a terror organization represents a historic breakthrough driven by more than a decade of sustained AJC advocacy.
AJC offices across Europe, supported by efforts in Washington and the regional offices, leverage trusted relationships with leaders across the continent to advance this landmark decision.
Because of our deep relationships with leaders across Europe, AJC's professionals understood the most effective strategies to achieve this outcome and worked jointly with lay leaders to help shape the organization's global advocacy approach.
We took every opportunity to educate and engage senior officials, including head of states, in key European capitals, on the multiple threats posed by the IRGC and the Iranian regime. We worked with the Transatlantic Friends of Israel, a coalition of lawmakers from both sides of the Atlantic that the AJC created to build global support for issues of mutual concern. We brought leaders to Israel through AJC Project Interchange so they could see firsthand the importance of designating the IRGC.
I witnessed this all firsthand in April during TAI's board mission to Brussels. I cannot emphasize enough the impact AJC has had and will continue to have as we work with diplomats, politicians, and decision makers across Europe.
This designation sent a clear and unmistakable message. Europe, together with governments around the world, will not tolerate the Iranian regime's terror.
We are building on this momentum to encourage additional countries and institutions to take similar action. This effort sets the stage for stronger international measures to counter Iran, helping ensure a safer world for Israel, Jews, the United States, and all countries targeted by Iran's malign activities.
Please welcome Brian Hook, Joyce Karam, Brett McGurk, and our moderator, Jason Isaacson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brett, Brian, Joyce, thank you again for taking the time to participate in this AJC Global Forum and for sharing with our audience here and those watching remotely your insights on the current and long-standing confrontation with Iran and the way forward. We chose the title of this plenary segment, Iran and the New Middle East, both to describe the geographical boundaries of our topic and to reflect the dichotomy that so clearly exists in that region, with the radical Islamic Republic of Iran holding fast to its destabilizing revolutionary credo, its antagonism to moderation and regional cooperation, and while the countries on the other side of the Arabian Gulf have been embracing at varying speeds modernity, pluralism, and regional integration and closer alignment with the West. And in the case of the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain, embracing relations with Israel. It's the problematic old Middle East versus the promising new Middle East. And of course, that clash has never been more vividly demonstrated than in the current US-led war. So let's begin with two basic questions to which I'd ask each of you to briefly respond. First, was this war inevitable or was it avoidable? And if it was avoidable, how would you assess the likelihood that its stated objectives, elimination of the Iranian nuclear threat, sharp restrictions on its ballistic missile program, an end to its support for terrorist proxies, and even the end of the regime itself, could be achieved by other than military means? Start with you, Brett.
Well, thanks, Jason. It's really great to be here, and everything that AJC does, I just great respect, and such a difficult time here in the world and in the country. But let me try to answer the question succinctly. I just spent a couple hours with the Seagulls, who I know were here yesterday, and so very emotional kind of reunion, seeing both of them. So I've been thinking a lot, obviously, about the October 7th crisis, but I think it gets to your question because this war, we've been at war with Iran since 1979, and the Iranian ideology, which remains very much intact, is to get the US out of the Middle East and to eliminate Israel. And as the White House point person through that crisis, let me just kind of very succinctly what a day was like. Put aside the horror of Gaza and the hostages and everything going on there for a moment. Iran, we're under attack in the Red Sea, anti-ship ballistic missiles flying Mach 4, trying to hit US ships and kill dozens of sailors. We're under attack in Iraq. We took a grievously wounded casualty on Christmas Day 2023, and attacks continued to escalate until we had 3 Americans dead in Jordan at the end of January. We are under, Iran launched 2 of the largest ballistic missile attacks in history against Israel before Israel ever attacked into Iran, and all the while Iran is enriching uranium in Fordo to 60% grade as this is all going on. I met the Iranians in Oman during this crisis. I dealt with it every day. And what Iran was doing to continue to escalate throughout that horror that was going on in the Middle East is a story that I don't think has been effectively, frankly, told. But it gets to your question. You can ask a lot of questions. You can dissect decisions of certain American presidents from Carter all the way through Trump. You can dissect American decision-making. You have to look at what Iran does, its policy, and what it does in the region, which drives so much of this mayhem. And I can criticize certain elements of the way this current campaign has been prosecuted. I think we're in a very difficult predicament now, which we can talk about. But the core of your question was this war. This war has been ongoing since 1979.
Okay. Joyce.
Well, thank you to AJC for having us. It's great to be between Brian and Brett, two senior officials that I've stalked so many times, so many emails unreturned. So this is my chance. But to your question, I mean, growing up in the Middle East, I mean, practically you're raised thinking every war is avoidable. It's sort of a survival instinct, you know? So with this war, the fingerprints of a train wreck was all over it from the very beginning. And all due respect, we haven't had a consistent diplomacy or any form of de-escalation with Iran since the exit from the JCPOA. Flawed, not flawed, we can debate that. But we've been on this escalation ladder since 2018, and when the June strikes happened, this was almost very predictable that it could lead to this. Now, could the Iranians have given up everything else in a deal? Brett probably right, they wouldn't. But should we have tried? Yes. And then, you know, the other conversation, how the military campaign was carried out. I mean, you talk to people in the Gulf, to the Emiratis, to others, what's happening around the Strait of Hormuz is terrifying for regional security. We want to talk about the missiles, the drones. They're already rebuilding what was lost. So if you want to pursue a military option, I don't know, I mean, I'm a journalist, what do I know? But at least do it right. We are at a point in the region. This is a very consequential war. This is not just, you know, the Iraq war. This is not the Lebanon war. This is a regional war that's being fought, and what comes out of it will decide, you know, the fate of what happens in Lebanon, what happens with Gulf security, and so on and so forth.
Joyce, thank you. Brian.
I think a major confrontation was inevitable only because the Iranian regime has structured things in a way where it's really hard to avoid it. If you look at the Iranian constitution, in the preambular paragraphs and then in the operative paragraphs, it talks about exporting revolution. And instead of investing in their own people, like we see in the Gulf, right, enormous material prosperity and investing in their own people, it's an entirely different picture in Iran. And they invested all of this money in the nuclear program, the missiles, the proxies. Death to America, death to Israel is the thematic, and they've been executing against that strategy for 47 years. And when I think about the fact that the Iranian regime has killed directly over 1,000 Americans, I just don't know how, and then on top of it, the nuclear program, I mean, it's a long list, we all know it in this room. I just don't know how we were going to avoid a major confrontation at some point. If polite diplomacy worked, we would have settled this during the presidency of Bill Clinton. And that was the first president that was dealing with Iran's nuclear program as a challenge. And I give President Trump a great deal of credit for taking on, I think, probably the hardest national security challenge, because this is a regime that has been investing in offensive capabilities for 47 years to export revolution and also to protect its nuclear program. And so a lot of presidents have tried to deal with the problem. Everybody has tried different approaches, all with, I think, the best intentions. I think one of the themes is that we've been trying to manage the nuclear problem. And I think President Trump has been trying to resolve it, to end it. And the enemy always has a say. These things are always very complicated, but Iran was at a point in its development of its nuclear program that I just don't know how we were going to avoid a major confrontation.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a repeat of the pattern of trying to solve problems instead of manage problems. Let's hope it's successful. Brian, let me stay with you for another question. If the ceasefire that both the United States and Iran, at least until today, have seemed intent on achieving, can be agreed to, a ceasefire that reopens the Strait of Hormuz, stabilizes trade and energy markets, and flattens the spike in inflation worldwide, and the stated objectives of this war are left to be negotiated afterward, how would you assess the likelihood of success in meeting America's stated goals at the bargaining table? And in such negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran, what will be necessary to produce a stronger, more acceptable outcome than was achieved in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action of 2015?
It seems like President Trump has put on this naval blockade, and Iran has tried to close the strait. And so this MOU seems to be something that would get the strait opened. And then it seems like it would be a bridge to diplomacy that would then create a final deal. I think if we were to get an MOU done, and the president doesn't seem like he's in any hurry, I think he has more economic space. In the last week, oil is down 8%. The S&P and the NASDAQ are at record highs. I saw the Federal Reserve in Atlanta was projecting Q2 growth in the United States to be very robust. And so maybe the president has more, maybe just more runway to get the deal that he wants on an MOU. And he also seems to be talking about an MOU that would do more than just open the strait, but would also then get this highly enriched uranium at 60% to a third country. And that seems to be a new condition he's added. The fact that he's added this condition makes me think he likes his position and has the economic and just maybe the political space to drive a harder deal. That would then be a bridge to, I think, negotiations around a final deal that would address, you know, the nuclear stuff, the missiles, the proxies, the whole panoply of issues that make Iran a threat to peace and security. That will be difficult diplomacy. Diplomacy with Iran is only as good as the coercive element behind it. And so if you have the military threat and the resumption of the naval blockade, like returning to the battlefield, returning to a blockade, that I think would then be the best atmospherics that you could get against a very difficult negotiating adversary. And as President Trump has said many times, the Iranian regime has never won a war and never lost a negotiation. And I think he understands they're very good at the negotiating table and buying time, playing cat and mouse with the IAEA. I think we're all very wise to that. When, you know, in the first administration, I worked a lot in North Korea, and I saw the president, you know, he had a number of meetings with Kim Jong-un. He had 3. There were a lot of negotiations around a deal. But then in Hanoi, he didn't like the deal, and he walked away from the negotiating table because he thought a bad deal was not a good outcome. And I think he has it, I think he views it the same way with Iran. I don't think he's going to accept a bad deal. So, you know, but then again, maybe he has the leverage he needs to let the naval blockade run until Iran wants to work through all of its issues beyond just the Strait and the HEU.
But a better deal is conceivable?
Well, with Trump, anything's conceivable.
Ah, there you go. Okay, thank you, Brian. Brett, let me turn to you. Serving in the Biden administration, you led an effort to build on the Abraham Accords successes of the first Trump administration and bring the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on board. With an enhanced security relationship with the United States, robust U.S.-Saudi nuclear cooperation, and as very much a part of that package, normalized relations with Israel. On the eve of October 7th, 2023, all indications were that this package was moving forward. Then Hamas, with Iran's support, launched its catastrophic attack on Israel. Israel responded with full force, and the process was frozen. The AJC was told by a senior Saudi official immediately after Hamas attacked that stopping Saudi-Israeli normalization, which would effectively have ended the Arab-Israeli conflict, was in fact Iran's objective. If that is the case, what has to change and what can change in the region to return to the trajectory of broader Arab-Israeli peace? We have an hour and a half to answer that.
Yeah. Look, I had the Saudis in my office on October 6th. That was a Friday. And we were, you know, putting truly the final pieces of this puzzle together. And again, an untold story. The Palestinian Authority, the Palestinians were kind of a part of this process. And if you remember September of 2023, a senior Saudi official went to Ramallah first time since 1967. We had a number of meetings with the Palestinians in Saudi Arabia. This was all kind of actually coming together in a way that when I went home that Friday night, I thought, you know, this is more likely than not to happen. And I think it would have happened. We never saw anything to suggest a direct connection between what happened just hours later. But certainly the deal was really coming together in a way that I think was in our interest. I think in the interest of the region, I think would have been in the interest of the Palestinians. I go through all the elements if we had more time. What's tragic is I think we're very far away from that now. I think what's happening in the region right now is a lot of kind of first principle thinking about where do our alliances lie. It's very fluid. But I do think if you kind of look through everything going on, there's still a glimpse of that because what came out of that normalization process, the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor, IMEC, all that kind of direction of travel is still very much there. And if you look at the just core interests of where some of the leaders want to lead, it ultimately leads to that destination of a more integrated region. And so once we come out of this, I remain hopeful that that package deal is very much possible. I would not put it out of the realm of the possible by the end of President Trump's term. I think we're a long way from there right now. I don't think you can force it. But Israel will have an important election. I think everybody's waiting to see how that comes out. And if you look ahead 2.5 years or so, I think there's a possibility that that can still happen. I think it's very important to keep working for it. I really do.
Brett, thank you. Joyce, it's easy to be numbed by the vast challenges and the daily horrors that are the reality in parts of the Middle East. When AJC CEO Ted Deutsch announced 2 years ago on this stage that we were launching our Center for a New Middle East, we were intent on building on the Abraham Accords and on the relationships that we've helped create over decades across the region to encourage the kind of cooperation and enlightened self-interest that would address these challenges and that would make those horrors, those conflicts, a thing of the past. From your vantage point as a journalist whose focus is on the entire region, whose roots are in the region, how do you envision the future of the Middle East when the current war in Iran is behind us and when Hezbollah no longer wields power in Lebanon? How does the new Middle East look to you?
Let me say there is a lot of optimism baked into that question. I like it. In my job as a journalist on the Middle East, you have to be a little bit optimistic to actually, you know, just wake up every day and do your job. But you mentioned the Iran war, and I've mentioned it's very consequential. You know, for many people, especially in the Gulf, they didn't ask for this war. They don't like what's happening around that. So it has to end the right way. It cannot end with Iran controlling the state of Hormuz. It cannot end with Hezbollah controlling South Lebanon. We saw the president said he spoke to Hezbollah representatives today. So we're still trying to find out who did he speak to. But this is, you know, to Brian's point, it's Trump. You don't know what you're gonna get. On, you know, the glass half full that keeps us going, there is a change in the region, and there is a desire to have better regional integration. This is a region where the majority is youth, where people want to talk to each other. I talk to Lebanese who are just extremely fatigued of, you know, decades of perpetual conflict with Israel. There is a change here in DC. I mean, the Trump administration was able to revive direct US-Lebanon, Israel-Lebanon talks that are actually convening again tomorrow. So for many of us, this is hopeful for a more integrated region, for a more peaceful region. But can it be done with, you know, missiles flying around and with Israel raising towns in South Lebanon? No, we really need to get back to a serious diplomatic track, along with coercive pressure, but to get back to that region that we all aspire to and we want to live together with peacefully.
You know, I'm really tempted to ask each of you, Brian and Brett, also your vision of a new Middle East. Is it achievable? Are we moving in that direction? Are the signals that we're hearing from the government of Lebanon, which are so dramatic, something that we can expect to look forward to across the region and other countries that don't yet have a relationship with Israel? Or is this just a dream that will have to get pushed farther and farther back? Start with you, Brian.
Maybe bring it back to the Abraham Accords. I felt like at the time we were trying to bring into existence a new Middle East that was very much led by the first signatories to the Abraham Accords. When we had UAE and Bahrain, and then we ended up moving to North Africa and did Morocco and Sudan. In spite of everything that's happened, not one has left the Abraham Accords. And certainly they were under pressure to do so. So I take that as a very positive sign of its staying power. President Trump has now put some more weight behind it in the context of this MOU. I like a lot of the leadership in the Middle East. You can see, you know, like just even in Iran, 2/3 of the Iranian people were born after the revolution. In January, you had 5 million people protest. It does mean 85 million people didn't protest. So you don't want to overread some of these different data points. But I think a lot of the Iranian people see the success going on across the Gulf, and it's hard not to see that and wonder, well, why is my government spending all of our national wealth and our natural wealth on nukes, missiles, and proxies? And so when I look at Saudi, UAE, Egypt, I mean, Bahrain, so many countries where I just feel much better about the future. And there are so many leaders, I think, that show real courage and are trying to not repeat the mistakes circa 1979. And there was a contagion after the Iranian Revolution. And I think that you have people that are recognizing that making peace with that element is going to end very badly. So I'm hopeful, broadly hopeful.
Brett, where are you on the hopefulness versus disappointed realism scale?
It's variable because of so many unknown questions. And one thing, and people in this room, I mean, will the United States of America remain actively engaged in the region, remain militarily present, or not? There's a question about this. I think it's very important in our vital national interest that we do. And I think the more we do, especially right now, after the conflict, and as Joyce said, how this comes out is going to drive a lot of what happened next. But if we can remain engaged in a bipartisan way, I think we can help effectuate some of these diplomatic trends. If we can't, people will be looking to their own security needs. It'll open up space for other actors, China and others, which we've seen in the past. I think right now, the US has a decent hand here to play, but that's a big question. Israel's election, I think how that comes out will be a big question. Everybody's kind of waiting to see where that comes out. But I come back to, on the hopeful is a strong word, but the interests of these countries, as Brian just said, to move in that direction, just in pure interests, economic interests, security interests, just the basic interests. One country asking, why can't I have an embassy in Israel when Turkey does or other countries? And we should have an embassy too, for our own interests. There's a direction of travel in that that is the orientation. We have to kind of nurture it there. But right now, everything right now is, I think, very much stuck. And we're going to have to see how things play out.
Let me close by asking each of you, just for a very short answer to the question, how do you see the U.S. remaining deeply invested in the Middle East, or do you see a tendency to back away from the intractable problems of the Middle East? Brian?
I remember reading Power, Faith, and Fantasy by Michael Oren, which chronicles the history of American involvement in the Middle East from George Washington all the way to 9/11. And it's a remarkable history of, from the time of the Barbary pirates and the Mediterranean squadron that we fielded. There just isn't, I'm thinking about what Brett said about just American engagement. You can leave the Middle East, but it usually follows you. That's sort of my takeaway from Power, Faith, and Fantasy. There just hasn't been a period where we haven't had interest there, from George Washington all the way to the present. And of course, there are periods of maybe overextension, periods of retrenchment, periods of accommodation. But, and obviously America being the world's largest energy producer has changed our relationship with the Middle East, but we've always had interests there. We've also had ideals. There's always some balance of interests and ideals in this great American experiment that I think will keep us engaged in the Middle East.
Joyce, are we
Yeah, no, I think I would agree. I mean, I've covered so many presidents that the Asia pivot would always start Obama's term, Biden, even, George W. Bush. Oh, it's the Asia pivot. We're not going to do much in the Middle East. And then all of them get sucked in. And it just tells you how central is that region to U.S. foreign policy. It is, I mean, it's hard to see a successful Middle East without American input. It's hard to see successful U.S. foreign policy without a successful Middle East. So I do agree with Brian there.
Yeah, we have to stay there. Brett.
2 seconds.
Said, I think every 4 years, I've been through 4 administrations, there's always a hope that we're going to somehow pivot or, look, we should not be overinvested, but we have to remain invested. And we got to get back, I think, to that, if we can, to that bipartisan spirit. I'll end on this point. I mean, the one, again, having just seen the Seagulls, when Trump won the election, we immediately engaged with their incoming team the day after the election, and we joined forces together. We actually worked together as an outgoing administration, incoming administration. And myself and Steve Witkoff, we were talking every single day, multiple times a day, to try to get that deal, recognizing that we had to work together to do it. And we did get it. We got that deal in place before the inauguration, hostages coming out the day before Trump was sworn in, and they were fortunate to have that done. That was by 2 very different administrations working together. And it comes down to our interests in the region. It should not be a partisan thing. Everything now is so polarized. So I am hopeful that we can maintain that level of investment and commitment in a sustainable way, and that'll help, I think, increase the odds that we move in the direction we want to move.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Brian. We are deeply invested in that region as well. Thank you very much for this program. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.